She spent every last penny to marry a stranger, 2,000 miles from home, and when she finally arrived, he wasn't there. No money, no roof, no way back. Most women would have crumbled. Ruth Ann Brennan just lifted her chin and waited. What happened next would change both their lives forever. This channel is your home for tales of the wild frontier, rugged cowboys, fearless love, the bond between mother and child, and the quiet grace that lives in ordinary human hearts. This story reminds us, the bravest thing you'll ever do is trust again after everything has burned down. If that speaks to your soul, hit like, drop your city in the comments, share this with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe so you never miss a story worth telling.
I want to see just how far Ruth Ann's story can travel. You, the mail-order bride. Ruth Ann spun around. A weathered-looking man in a leather apron stood about 3 feet from her, arms folded, sizing her up like she was livestock for sale. I am Ruth Ann Brennan, here to see Samuel Hartwell. Hartwell? The blacksmith spat a stream of tobacco juice into the dust. I cannot say I have seen him today. He knew I was arriving. That does not mean much out here. Mail runs slow, horses go lame, and men forget. He shrugged his shoulders. You might be sitting for a good long while, ma'am. Ruth Ann felt her stomach sink, but she kept her face a perfect mask. 10 years working as a bunkie housekeeper had taught her that much. You never let them see your fear. I will wait then. She found a spot on a bench outside the general store, sat down and folded her hands neatly in her lap so nobody could see them tremble. The July sun beat down something fierce. Sweat soaked her dress clean through in a matter of minutes. The loud buzzing of grasshoppers filled the air from the dry fields past the edge of town. Even the shade felt as hot as an oven. A woman came out of the store, then stopped and stared. You are the one from back east. Yes, ma'am. I am answering Sam Hartwell's advertisement. That is right. The woman's lips formed a thin line. That makes you either brave or desperate. Ruth Ann looked her straight in the eye. Perhaps I am a little of both. A different look crossed the woman's face. It was not quite approval, but maybe it was understanding. I am Margaret Sullivan. My husband and I own this store. She took a breath. If Hartwell does not appear, you come on inside. I am not about to let a woman bake to death on my front porch. I am much obliged. Margaret went back inside, and Ruth Ann was alone once more. 1 hour went by, and then a second. The sun got even higher. Her throat was bone dry. The few coins she had left would not last her a week. If Samuel Hartwell did not show up, do not let your mind go there. She had made it through Boston. She would make it through this. But that old fear was clawing at her insides, pulling up bad memories she had fought so hard to bury. The pantry, the feel of Charles Whitmore's hands, the solid weight of the skillet right before she swung, the sight of blood on his forehead and his mother's voice as cold as ice. That Irish girl assaulted my son. Not a single person had believed Ruth Ann. Not the other servants, not the constable, and not one soul in all of Boston society. Damaged goods. That is the name they had branded her with. Damaged goods that no respectable family would ever consider hiring. She had composed 7 letters to 7 different strangers, describing herself with painful honesty. 32 years old, plain, with a sharp tongue, and carrying a reputation that would make proper ladies gasp. Only a single man had bothered to write back. Samuel Hartwell. Miss Brennan, I do not give a hill of beans about your reputation. I need a woman who is not afraid of hard work and tells things straight. Come if that suits you. And so she had come, selling off everything she owned. She had crossed half the country, fueled by nothing but hope and pure desperation. And he was not here. Ruth Ann Brennan. The voice that called her name came from behind her, low and gritty, like rocks tumbling in a dry creek bed. Ruth Ann got to her feet and turned around slowly. He was a tall man, built solid, with a face that looked like it was carved from old saddle leather. Lines were etched deep around gray eyes that seemed to have seen more than their share of trouble. A long scar ran from his shoulder down underneath his collar. His dark hair had streaks of gray, and his jaw was set firm. He was not a handsome man. He was something else entirely. Mr. Hartwell, Sam. He made no move to shake her hand. My horse lost a shoe about 5 miles back. I had to walk. That is a long way to walk in this heat. I have been through worse. His gaze passed over her face, but he was not judging her looks. He was judging something different. I pictured you a little taller. I am tougher than I look. You would have to be. He reached down and picked up her travel bag. The wagon is out back. We can talk on the ride. He began walking away without even checking to see if she was coming with him. Ruth Ann stood there for just a second. She could feel Margaret Sullivan watching her from the store window. She could feel the eyes of everyone in Copper Creek on the mail-order bride and the solitary rancher. Then she lifted her chin and followed him. The wagon bounced along a trail heading north through wide-open country. Mountains stood tall in the distance. The dry grass stretched out as far as the eye could see in every direction, brown and brittle under the summer sun. Sam drove the wagon without saying a word. A full mile must have passed before he finally spoke. I'm not much for talking. I noticed that. His jaw twitched, almost forming a smile, but not quite. You are always this blunt. It saves time. Fair enough. He flicked the reins. Your letter mentioned you ran into some trouble back in Boston. Said something about a reputation. Ruth Ann's hands squeezed together in her lap. Are you asking me to explain myself? I am asking if that trouble is going to follow you out here. The truth or the lie? Both. She took a deep breath. She had sworn to herself she would be honest. If he was going to turn her away, it was better to get it over with now. The truth is, I was a housekeeper for a rich family. The son trapped me in the pantry one night and tried to have his way with me. Her voice was steady and flat, the only way she could get the words out. I hit him with a skillet and left him with a scar. Sam's face showed no reaction. The lie is that I tried to seduce him and then I attacked him when he said no. She paused. That is the story his mother told everyone, and that is the story that Boston believed. There was only silence. The wagon wheels groaned. The horses kept walking at a steady pace. Ruth Ann braced herself for him to tell her to get out. You still have it? She blinked, completely confused. What? The skillet. Do you still have it with you? Oh, no, Mrs. Whitmore kept it. Sam gave a slow nod. That is a shame. A woman who can swing cast iron that hard would come in mighty handy during branding. Ruth Ann just stared at him. You believe me? You came 2,000 miles on nothing but a hope and a prayer. If you were the kind of woman to throw herself at men, you would have found a much easier way to live. His gray eyes locked with hers. They were steady and impossible to read. I know what it looks like when a person is running from something that was not there. Fault. How? The war. The word came out flat and hard. I fought for the Union for 4 years. I lost my brother at Antietam. He paused for a moment. I came out west after that. I built this ranch with my own hands. I lost my wife 5 years ago. I am sorry to hear that. Do not be. It was a long time ago. They rode on without speaking for another mile. The heat was pressing down on them. A trickle of sweat ran down Ruth Ann's back. Can I ask you something? She finally said. Go right ahead. Why did you choose me? You surely must have received other letters. Letters from women without scandals, without all these complications. Sam's jaw clenched up. I got plenty of them. Most of them were from women wanting to know about the size of the house, how many head of cattle I owned, or if I could provide them with a comfortable life. Those were not the right questions. They were not honest questions. He glanced over at her. Your letter was different. You did not ask what I could give you. You told me what you could offer, hard work, loyalty, honesty. That seemed a whole lot more important than the size of my parlor. That is the reason I chose you." His voice got a little softer. "I have had enough of pretending to last me a lifetime. I want something real, even if it is complicated." A feeling stirred inside Ruth Ann's chest. It was something she had not felt in months. It was hope, and it was dangerous and terrifying. But it was there. "I should probably warn you," she said, "that I am not an easy person to live with. I tend to speak my mind. I have got a temper, and my sense of humor has been called unfitting for a lady. Sounds to me like you will fit right in. And I do not know the first thing about ranching. The only livestock I have ever been around are chickens. You will learn. What if I am completely hopeless at it?" Sam turned his head to look at her directly, and something in his gray eyes made her breath catch in her throat. "You traveled across half this country all by yourself to marry a stranger, all because you refused to let a lie define who you are." He paused. "There is not a hopeless bone in your body, Ruth Ann. You just have not found the right place to prove it yet." His words felt like a physical touch. She quickly looked away and blinked hard against the sudden wetness in her eyes. "That is a very generous thing to say about a woman you just met." "It is not generous, it is just what I see." They came over the top of a small hill, and Ruth Ann got her first sight of the ranch. There was a sturdy-looking cabin with smoke rising up from its chimney. A solid barn stood nearby with fenced pastures where cattle grazed in the afternoon heat. It was nothing grand, nothing at all like Boston, but it was solid and real. "It is not much," Sam said, watching her face. "It is beautiful." He gave her a sharp look. "Nobody has ever said that about it before." "Then nobody has ever looked at it the right way," she said. She met his gaze directly. "A place built by one man's own hands, standing up strong against all this empty land. That is beautiful, even if it is not pretty." Something in his expression changed. It was not quite a smile, but it was close. "We will get you settled in tonight. Tomorrow, I will show you how everything works. Tonight is fine. I did not come all this way just to sit around and rest. You came all this way to nearly die from heat stroke while waiting on a man whose horse lost a shoe." He shook his head. "Tonight, you will rest. Tomorrow, we work." Ruth Ann wanted to protest, but the deep exhaustion she felt kept her quiet. "Tomorrow, then." They stopped the wagon in front of the cabin. Sam came around and helped her down, his hands careful as they held her waist. They were calloused and warm. He stepped away quickly. "There is a room off the main house. It is yours until you decide differently. It has a bed and a washstand. The window looks out to the east and you get your own room by the stove." He picked up her travel bag. "We will figure out the rest of it as we go along." Ruth Ann followed him into the house. The cabin was clean but bare. There were no curtains, no rugs, and no pictures on the walls. It was a bachelor's home, functional but lonely. "The kitchen is over there and the pantry is stocked. I will show you where everything is tomorrow." "Thank you, Sam." He placed her bag just outside a little doorway, feeling out of place. "This ain't my strong suit. It's been ages since I shared a house with anyone. I'm not much good at it myself, but I suppose we'll figure it out." His gray eyes, walled off but not mean, met hers. "I reckon we will." He started for his room but pulled up short. His hand clenched the doorframe so tight his knuckles went bone white. Ruth Ann saw it all unfold. How his gaze drifted off to nowhere, how his jaw set hard as stone. His whole body went stiff, like he'd been snatched away to some other place. Sam. He didn't hear. Sam. He blinked, and just like that, he was back. His fingers uncurled from the wood. "Apologies." His voice was gravelly. "Sometimes I just check out." "Does that happen a lot?" He gave no answer. He just stood there, breathing deep and slow, wrestling himself back into the room. Ruth Ann knew better than to press him. She recognized the look of a person haunted by a past that won't stay buried. "Good night, Sam." "Night, Ruth Ann." He vanished behind his door. The latch clicked shut. Ruth Ann was left standing in the little room she now called home. She could hear him through the thin wall, a chair dragging, the splash of water, and then a heavy quiet. She unpacked her meager things one by one. 2 dresses hung on the pegs, her brush and comb set on the washstand. And the little Bible a preacher's wife had pressed into her hands. Her mind went back to Boston, to the pantry, the heavy iron skillet, and the stain on the floor. She recalled all the hushed gossip, the doors shut in her face, and those long nights on a cot in a church basement, praying for a single day of peace. Then she remembered Sam Hartwell's steady gray eyes, how he'd taken in her whole story without so much as a blink. He'd spoken it plain as day. You're not hopeless at anything. You just need to find the right patch of dirt to plant your feet. This could be that patch of dirt. Ruth Ann stretched out on the slim mattress, and weariness took her down deep. Tomorrow she'd get the lay of this ranch. Tomorrow she'd show him what she was made of. Tomorrow she'd start putting together a life she hadn't let herself dream about. But for tonight, after so many months, she wasn't by herself. She could hear Sam's breathing through the wall, ragged at first, then evening out. Just 2 lost souls under one roof, each with their own scars, each outrunning their own phantoms, and each wondering if the other was somebody they could finally count on. A sudden bang jolted Ruth Ann from her sleep. She shot straight up, her heart hammering against her ribs. Pale morning light was seeping through the window. It was nearly dawn. Another crash rattled the cabin, then a man's voice, torn up and raw. "Thomas, Thomas." Before she knew it, Ruth Ann was up and moving. She hurried across the main room and shoved open Sam's door. He was on the floor, all twisted up in his blankets. His eyes were wide open but saw nothing in that room, his hands clawing at the empty air. "Hang in there, Thomas. Just hang in there. Sam!" Ruth Ann knelt down next to him. "Sam, you need to wake up." His arm snapped out and his hand clamped onto her wrist like a steel trap. I couldn't get to him. The smoke was too thick. I couldn't. "Sam." Her voice was level and strong. "You are in Montana. This is your home. The war is done." His frantic eyes finally locked onto hers. They were wild with a terrible fear. "You are safe," she told him. "Just breathe. Take a breath." Little by little, the pressure on her wrist eased. His ragged breaths began to even out. The panic in his eyes started to recede. He looked at her then, really saw her, and a deep wave of shame washed over his face. Ruth Ann. He let go and scrambled back to sit against the wall. "I am so sorry. I didn't mean to. Don't you dare apologize. You had no business seeing that. I've seen a whole lot worse." She settled back on her heels. "Thomas was your brother, wasn't he?" Sam's jaw went rigid, but he said nothing. Ruth Ann got to her feet and held out a hand. "Come on now. I'll put on some coffee." He just looked at her hand for a good long while before he finally took it. His skin was rough and calloused, and he had a slight tremble. She helped him stand. "You're not taken off." His voice was low, laced with confusion. "And where would I run to? Most ladies would be long gone after a scene like that." Ruth Ann met his look head-on. "I once laid a man out with a cast-iron skillet for putting his hands where they didn't belong, and I was the one who got run out of town for it. You think a bad dream is going to spook me?" A little something sparked in his eyes. It wasn't thanks. Not quite. It was understanding. "Coffee, then," he agreed. "Coffee." She headed for the kitchen. She heard him draw a long breath behind her, getting his bearings. "Ruth Ann." She paused at the doorway. "Yeah, thank you." She kept her back to him. "Don't go thanking me just yet. I'm a terrible cook." From behind her came a noise. It was coarse and surprising. Sam Hartwell was actually laughing. It was just a short, rough bark of a sound, but it was genuine. A small smile touched Ruth Ann's lips as she went to the stove. The sun was climbing over the Montana plains. It promised another blistering day of heat, dust, and watching eyes. Yet, for the first time since leaving Boston, Ruth Ann Brennan felt a glimmer of something she thought was gone for good. Hope. Maybe, just maybe, she was right where she was supposed to be. The coffee was awful. Ruth Ann looked from her cup to Sam. "I did warn you." Sam took a long swallow. His expression was like stone. "I've had worse." "Where at?" "During the war." "Don't you go getting ahead of yourself." She almost smiled, but not quite. Outside, the sun was already beating down hard. You could see the heat rising in waves from the baked earth. Sweat was already starting to bead on Ruth Ann's forehead, and she hadn't done a lick of work. She set her cup down. "So, what's the first thing you need me to learn?" Sam shoved his chair back from the table. "You eatin'?" "I'm not hungry." "That ain't what I asked. I asked if you'd eaten." He grabbed a tin of biscuits off a shelf and plunked it down in front of her. "Eat. Then we get to work." Ruth Ann took a bite of a biscuit. It was dry as dust and hard as a rock, likely made last week. "This is even worse than my coffee." "I'm aware." Sam poured more of the dreadful coffee into his cup regardless. "That's exactly why I need you to learn your way around a kitchen." After their meal, they stepped out into the heat. Sam set a brisk pace, all business, and Ruth Ann had to hustle to keep from falling behind. First stop was the chicken coop. 12 hens and 1 rooster with a bad attitude. "Eggs every morning," he told her. "The rooster goes by Satan. Don't you ever turn your back on him. You really named your rooster Satan? He worked for it." Next up was the barn. Inside were 2 horses, a milk cow he called Bessie, and a hayloft that was a mess. "You know how to milk a cow? I do not. Can you learn? I can learn to do anything." The corner of Sam's mouth twitched just a bit. "We'll see about that." He put a bucket in her hand and nodded toward Bessie. "Sit on the stool. Grab her teats like so," he demonstrated. A gentle downward pull. Squeeze and pull. Squeeze and pull. Ruth Ann took a seat, got a hold, and gave it a tug. Not a drop. She tried it again. Still nothing. "You got a death grip on her," Sam said flatly. "No, I don't." "Yes, you do. Ease up. You have to let the milk flow." Ruth Ann relaxed her hands and pulled. A skinny stream of milk finally hissed into the bucket. "There you have it." She glanced up at him. "That's all there is to it?" "That's it. Now just do that about 200 more times." When she was finally done, her hands were aching something fierce and her back was screaming, but the bucket was halfway full. Sam gave a slight nod when he looked at it. "You did all right for a woman from back east. I'm not from back east anymore. That remains to be seen." The rest of the morning was a whirlwind of chores. She fed the chickens, gathered the eggs, and tried to remember where all the tools belonged. Sam gave his instructions in short, sharp bursts. He didn't waste a single word and had no time for questions he figured she ought to know the answer to. Ruth Ann barely managed to keep pace. By lunchtime, she was soaked through with sweat. Her dress stuck to her skin, and her red hair escaping its pins in every direction. She felt like a mess, and she felt more alive than she had in years. "Time for a dinner break," Sam announced. "After that, we're riding out to look over the herd. But I don't know how to ride a horse." "You're learning this afternoon." "This afternoon?" Ruth Ann stared at him. "You're having a good time with this, aren't you?" "A good time with what?" "Watching me flounder." Sam's face gave nothing away, but she saw a flicker deep in his eyes. "I'm not watching you struggle. I'm watching you not give up. There's a big difference." His words struck her with more force than she expected. Their lunch was a simple affair. Some bread, a hunk of cheese, and dried beef so tough it felt like she was chewing on it for half the day. While she ate, Sam got 2 horses ready. When she stepped out of the cabin, he was holding the reins of a gentle-looking brown mare. "This here is Penny. She's got a lot of patience. She won't buck you off unless you give her a good reason." "And how would I do that?" "Kick her too sharp. Yank on the reins, get scared, and squeeze with your legs when you ought to be relaxing." He stopped for a second. "Pretty much everything you're fixing to do. Your faith in me is just astounding. Faith has to be earned." He laced his hands together to give her a boost. "Left foot here. Swing your other leg over the top. Don't overthink it. Ruth Ann placed her boot in his hands, heaved herself up, and came down in the saddle with a thud. Penny sidestepped beneath her. "Whoa, now, easy." Sam's voice went low and calm. "She can feel you're spooked. Just take a slow breath. Let yourself settle in." Ruth Ann did as he said. Penny grew still. "Atta girl." Sam mounted his own horse in one smooth motion, looking like he was part of the animal. "Just follow my lead. Don't fight her with the reins. Too much. Penny knows the way." They left the yard behind and headed out onto the wide open prairie. At first, Ruth Ann held the reins in a white-knuckle grip, her whole body stiff with nerves. But Penny was as steady as Sam promised. After a time, Ruth Ann started to loosen up, finding the gentle rocking motion of the horse. "You're getting the hang of it," Sam called over his shoulder. "I'm scared to death. That's how you know you're doing it right. Just keep going." They located the herd in a low valley a couple miles from the cabin. About 50 head of cattle were scattered about, grazing in the afternoon sun. Sam swung down from his horse and moved through them, his eyes sharp and practiced on each one. Ruth Ann watched from Penny's back as he went about his work. "Checking for any sickness," Sam said without turning. "Wounds? Anything that looks like a predator got to 'em. Coyotes are always sneaking down from the hills. Wolves, too, come winter." "What happens if you find one that's hurt?" "I patch it up if I can. If I can't, I put it out of its misery." "You've had to do that before? Put down one of your own animals?" Sam stood up straight and looked her square in the eye. "I've had to do plenty of things I never wanted to do. That's part of ranching. It's part of living." Ruth Ann heard the things he wasn't saying. About the war, about his wife, about his brother. "I'm real sorry about Thomas," she said, her voice soft. "Your brother? I'm sorry for your loss." Sam froze right where he stood. For a long while, he just stayed quiet. "You heard me this morning in that bad dream. I heard you calling for him, saying you couldn't get to him. There was a fire." His voice was empty, like it was coming from far away. "Artillery hit our position. Thomas was pinned under a beam. I tried like hell to get him out, but he swallowed hard. I couldn't do it. Sam, that was 12 years ago. You shouldn't still—" "It should." Ruth Ann cut him right off. "It should still matter. He was your brother." Sam looked at her. Really looked at her. And she saw something break deep down in his eyes. Mary used to say that. "My wife," he said, pausing. "She was the only one who got it. When she passed, I figured I'd just have to carry it by myself." "You don't have to." "Don't I?" "No." Ruth Ann met his gaze and held it. "I don't know the first thing about ranchin', Sam. But I know about carrying things all alone, and I know you can't do it forever." Sam just stared at her for what felt like a lifetime. Then he turned his attention back to the cattle. "We ought to head back. There's a storm coming." Ruth Ann glanced up at the sky. It was clear as a bell. Not a single cloud. "I don't see any storm." "The cattle do. See how they're bunching up like that?" Sam swung himself back up on his horse. "We've got maybe 2 hours. We need to get back and get that barn secured." They rode hard on the way back to the ranch. Ruth Ann bounced, something fierce in the saddle, but she didn't make a peep. By the time they got to the cabin, dark clouds were stacking up on the horizon, and they were moving fast. "Help me get these chickens in," Sam called out. "Then we'll move the horses." Ruth Ann got to work. The wind hit them before they were done, howling and mean. Ruth Ann's dress whipped around her legs while she chased the last hen toward the coop, with that rooster Satan pecking at her ankles the entire time. "Get inside!" Sam yelled over the wind. "I got the horses!" Ruth Ann made a run for the cabin. The door slammed shut behind her just as the first bolt of lightning tore the sky in two. She stood there in the dark, catching her breath, just listening to the storm tear things up outside. Rain beat down on the roof. Thunder rattled the walls. The door flew open. Sam stumbled inside, soaked clean through, with water pouring from his hair. "Horses are in." He threw his weight against the door to shut it against the wind. "Looks like we're stuck in here till it blows over." Ruth Ann looked at him, dripping wet and worn out. looking more like a real person than she had ever seen him. "I'll make some coffee. It's still going to be awful." "I know." She made the coffee. They sat there at the table listening to the storm, and for some reason the silence felt different this time. It wasn't as awkward, it was more like two people figuring out how to be in the same room together. "You did all right today," Sam finally said. "With the milking, the riding, the chickens. I chased a chicken for 10 minutes and got my ankles torn up by Satan." "And you caught the chicken," he said with a shrug. "That's the part that counts." Ruth Ann warmed her hands on her mug. "Why does it mean so much to you?" "Me, proving myself." Sam was quiet for a good long while. "My first wife, Elizabeth, she couldn't take any of this. Not the work, not being so far from everything, not the hard days. She was gone after 8 months. Your letter said you lost your wife. I did. To a traveling salesman with soft hands." His voice was full of gravel. "She left a note. Said she deserved better. Deserved a life that was easier. Deserved a man who could give her pretty things instead of calluses." "I am so sorry." "Don't be. She was right about one thing. This life ain't for everybody. It is hard. And it is lonely. And sometimes you work yourself down to the bone just to wind up right back where you started." He looked straight at Ruth Ann. "I need to know you won't run off. I need to know you'll stay, even when things get ugly. I have seen ugly. I lived through it. Boston ugly. This here is different, is it?" Ruth Ann put her cup down. "In Boston, a man cornered me and hurt me, and then everyone blamed me for it. I lost everything. My job, my good name, my whole future. I slept on the floor of a church basement and begged for food scraps." Her voice got hard as stone. "What kind of ugly do you have out here that you think is going to scare me, Sam Storms? Hard work. Chickens." Something in his face changed then. "You are angry. I have been angry for months. I am just done hiding it." "Good." Sam nodded, slow-like. "Angry is useful. Angry gets work done." The storm kept on for 3 more hours. They talked through most of it, about the ranch, about all the work that needed doing, about the neighbors Sam hardly ever saw, and the town he stayed away from whenever he could. "There is a man named Daniel Crawford," Sam said after a bit, his voice turning dark. "His ranch is about 5 miles east of here. He has been trying to buy my land for 2 years now, for the water rights. My creek is what feeds half his pastures, and you will not sell. This land is everything I have. I built this place from scratch after the war. I'm not about to give it up just because some rich fella wants more than he needs. What does he do about it? Nothing legal, just puts on the pressure. He lets his cows wander onto my property, spreads rumors about me in town, just makes my life difficult." Sam's jaw was set tight. "He will probably come around once he hears I have got a wife, to make things more difficult, to see what he is up against this time." Sam met her gaze. "Crawford does not like to lose, and he sure does not like being told no." "Well then, we have got something in common." The storm finally gave up just before the sun went down. Ruth Ann stepped out onto the porch and found the whole world scrubbed clean. Everything was shining in the gold light. Ruth Ann. She turned around. Sam was standing in the doorway, framed by the light from the lamp inside. "Tomorrow we are going to town. We will get you some proper clothes for ranch work and introduce you to some folks. Is that really necessary?" "It is necessary." His voice got a little softer. "They are going to talk about you one way or the other. It is better they meet you and see for themselves what you are made of. What if they do not like what they see? Then they are fools." Sam paused. "You impressed me today, and I am not an easy man to impress." Ruth Ann felt her cheeks get warm. "I milked a cow and got chased by a rooster, and you did not quit. You did not complain. You did not ask me to go slower or make anything easier for you." He stepped out onto the porch. "Elizabeth complained from the very first day. Said the cabin was too small. Said the work was too hard. Said I did not talk enough. Did not smile enough. Did not give her enough of my time. His voice got low. You have not complained one single time. I have only been here for one day. It was the longest day of my life, and you are still standing here. They just looked at each other as the light faded away. Something passed between them. It was not romance, not yet. It was something smaller, more careful. The first thin, little thread of trust. Thank you, Ruth Ann said, her voice soft, for giving me a chance, for believing me about what happened in Boston. Do not thank me yet. You have not met the neighbors. She almost smiled. Are they that bad? Margaret Sullivan is going to want to know your whole life story. And I mean everything. Where you came from, who your family is, why a woman your age is not already married off. Sam shook his head. She will be polite about it, but she will be digging for information. I can handle a little digging. I know you can. Sam turned to go back inside. Get some sleep. It is a long ride to town, and tomorrow is going to be even harder than today was. That is encouraging. I am not here to encourage you. I am here to get you ready. He went inside. Ruth Ann stayed on the porch for a long time, just watching the stars pop out in the darkening sky. The air smelled of rain and sagebrush, and something else she could not put a name to. Something wild and clean, and nothing at all like Boston. She thought about tomorrow, about facing a whole town of strangers, about Margaret Sullivan's questions and Daniel Crawford's pressure, and all the worries about how this new life could crumble before it even truly began. But she also thought about the look in Sam's gray eyes, the way he had listened without passing judgment, the way he had opened up about his own pain after she had shared hers. Maybe this had a chance. Maybe she could build something solid here. Ruth Ann went inside the house and shut the door against the dark night. The next morning arrived far too quickly. Ruth Ann was awake before the sun, her muscles aching from yesterday's hard work, and she found Sam already at the stove. Made some coffee, he said without turning his head. Figured you'd want something drinkable for a change. She accepted the cup he offered and took a sip. It was surprisingly good. You can teach me how to do that later. Get yourself dressed. We are leaving in 1 hour. The journey to town took a lot longer than Ruth Ann had anticipated. Sam kept the horses at a slow, steady pace, explaining things along the way, like whose land they were passing through, where the property lines were, which neighbors were friendly, and which ones to keep your distance from. Eliza Thornton's place is just over that ridge. She is a widow, runs her ranch all by herself since her husband died 10 years back. You will like her. How can you be so sure? Because she does not suffer fools either. They arrived in Copper Creek just as the town was coming to life. Ruth Ann recognized Margaret Sullivan sweeping the front porch of the general store. The blacksmith was already hard at it with sparks flying from his forge. And standing right in the middle of the street, blocking their way, was a man Ruth Ann had never laid eyes on. He was tall, dressed too nicely, and far too clean for this part of the country. He was smiling, but it was a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. Sam's entire body went stiff as a board. Hartwell. The man tipped his fancy hat. Heard you finally went and got yourself a wife. Had to come see for myself. Crawford. Sam's voice was cold enough to freeze water. Move. Now, that is no way to greet a neighbor. Crawford's gaze shifted over to Ruth Ann. He looked her over the same way a man sizes up livestock at an auction. This is her. This is the woman you sent away for. Ruth Ann felt her back straighten up. I am Ruth Ann Brennan. Brennan. Crawford's smile got wider. Irish. I can hear it in your voice. From Boston, if I am not mistaken. You are not interesting. He stepped closer to the wagon, too close for comfort. A Boston Irish girl all the way out here. You must have been mighty desperate to answer some stranger's advertisement in a paper. Sam moved before Ruth Ann could even think to answer. In one smooth motion, he was off the wagon and right in Crawford's face. "You say one more word about my wife, I dare you." That smile finally vanished from Crawford's face. "You be careful, Hartwell. That temper of yours is going to land you in real trouble one of these days. And that mouth of yours will do the same for you." The two men just stood there, completely still, and the air between them felt like it was about to catch fire. Ruth Ann climbed down from the wagon and walked right between them. "Mr. Crawford," her voice was perfectly pleasant but cold as ice, "I'm sure you have some other place you need to be. Please do not let us keep you." Crawford looked down at her. Something in his eyes changed. Maybe it was surprise, or maybe he was just sizing her up all over again. "She has got some fire in her," he said to Sam. "I will give you that. She is not yours to be giving anything to." Sam had not moved an inch, had not relaxed one bit. "Now get out of my way." Crawford tipped his hat one more time. "We will talk soon, Hartwell, about those water rights. Now that you have a wife to consider, perhaps you will be a little more reasonable." Then he turned and walked away. Sam stood there for a long moment, breathing hard. Then he finally turned to Ruth Ann. "You should not have gotten between us. You should not have let him provoke you. He was insulting you. And I can handle insults." Ruth Ann met his gaze without flinching. "I have been handling insults my entire life. What I cannot handle is you getting into a brawl on my account and making everything worse for us." Sam just stared at her. Then, very slowly, his shoulders slumped. "You are right. I know I am right. That does not mean I enjoyed having to say it. You had better get used to it." Ruth Ann turned and started walking toward the general store. "Now, are we going to do our shopping? Or are we just going to stand here in the street all day long?" Sam almost cracked a smile. Almost. "Shopping," he said. "Lord help me." They walked into the store together. Margaret Sullivan was there waiting for them. Margaret Sullivan looked Ruth Ann up and down as if she were inspecting a horse she was thinking of buying. "So, you are the one?" "I am the one." "From Boston, I hear." "That is right." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "What would bring a Boston woman all this way to Montana? You must have been running from something." Ruth Ann felt Sam tense up right beside her. She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Steady," she murmured. "I was running toward something, Mrs. Sullivan, a new life, a chance to start fresh." "Humph." Margaret did not look one bit convinced. "We will just see about that." She turned on her heel and disappeared into the back of the store. Ruth Ann let out a long breath she had not even realized she was holding. "Well, that went well," Sam muttered under his breath. "Did it not? She did not throw you out. That has got to count for something." They spent the next hour in the store. Ruth Ann chose some work dresses, a pair of sturdy boots, and a wide-brimmed hat to shield her face from the sun. Sam paid for it all without saying a word, though his jaw was set tight every single time Margaret glanced in their direction. When they finally stepped back out onto the street, Ruth Ann's arms were piled high with packages, and her head was spinning. "Is everyone in this town so suspicious?" "Most of them are." Sam took some of the packages from her. "They will warm up to you, eventually." "How eventually?" "Give it about a year." "A year?" "Maybe 2. Ruth Ann almost laughed. Almost. They were busy loading up the wagon when a woman's voice called out to them. "Sam Hartwell, is that a wife I see with you?" Ruth Ann turned around. A woman who looked to be in her 50s was striding toward them. Her silver hair was pulled back in a tight bun, and her face was weathered by the sun, but her eyes were kind. She moved with the confidence of someone who had worked hard her whole life and had no plans to stop any time soon. "Eliza." Sam's voice warmed up a little. "This is Ruth Ann." "Ruth Ann, I am Eliza Thornton. I own the ranch just north of this one." The widow who runs her place all by herself. Ruth Ann offered her hand. Sam told me about you. Eliza's handshake was firm and strong. Oh, did he now? And what exactly did he say? He said that you do not suffer fools. Eliza let out a real laugh, one that was full and genuine. Well, that is the honest truth. And what about you? Do you suffer fools? Not anymore. Something flickered in Eliza's eyes. It looked like approval. Good. You are going to need that spirit out here. She glanced over at Sam. Crawford was sniffing around earlier today. I saw him talking to the blacksmith, asking questions. Sam's friendly expression vanished. What kind of questions? About your water source, about your new wife, and about whether you might be willing to sell your land now that you have someone else to worry about. I am not selling. I know that. But he does not. Eliza lowered her voice a little. You watch yourself, Sam. Crawford has been getting more and more desperate. He lost 300 head of cattle to the drought last month. He needs your water, and desperate men are known to do desperate things. Let him try something. That is exactly what I am afraid of. Eliza turned her attention back to Ruth Ann. You watch him too. Crawford has a silver tongue and a heart as black as coal. He will try to get to Sam through you if he thinks he can. He already tried, and I told him to go find some other place to be. Eliza smiled wide. I like her, Sam. Do not go and break this one. She walked off before Sam had a chance to reply. The ride back home was quiet. Ruth Ann could feel the tension coming off of Sam in waves. She could see it in the rigid set of his shoulders and the way his hands were gripping the reins so tightly. You are worried about Crawford. I am always worried about Crawford. What has he done before? Sam was quiet for a long time. Last spring, someone cut my fence line and let 30 head of my cattle wander right onto Crawford's property. He claimed they were just strays, said they had been on his land for weeks. It took me a whole month to get them back, and even then, I'm still not sure I got all of them. You think he did it? I cannot prove it, but yes, I think he did it. What about the law? Sam let out a bitter laugh. The sheriff is Crawford's cousin. So, what do you think? Ruth Ann felt a chill go down her spine despite the afternoon heat. So, he can just do whatever he wants. As long as he's careful about it. As long as there is no proof. Sam shook his head. That is why I need this ranch running perfectly. I need the herd to be healthy. I need everything to be in order so that when he comes after me again, I will be able to survive it. And me? Where do I fit into all of this? Sam glanced over at her. You fit in wherever you choose to fit in. I am not going to tell you what to do, Ruth Ann. I am just telling you exactly what we are up against. They pulled into the ranch yard just as the sun was beginning to set. Ruth Ann helped Sam unload the packages from the wagon, and they ate a quiet dinner of bread and a stew that she had managed not to burn. That night, lying in her narrow bed, Ruth Ann listened to the deep silence of the Montana prairie and thought long and hard about what she had gotten herself into. Crawford, the drought, the suspicious neighbors, a husband who still flinched if she moved too quickly, who still woke up screaming his brother's name in the middle of the night. This was so much harder than she had ever imagined. It was harder than Boston in some ways. But it was honest. It was real. And that had to count for something. 3 weeks went by. Ruth Ann learned how to cook meals that did not taste like old boot leather. She learned to ride a horse without flopping around like a sack of potatoes. She learned which of the chickens were friendly and which ones would try to peck your eyes out if you gave them half a chance. And she learned Sam, too. She learned that he woke up before the sun every single day, no matter how late he had worked the night before. She learned that he talked to the horses when he thought no one was listening, whispering gentle words she could never quite make out. She learned that he kept a small wooden box under his bed. And one night, when he thought she was fast asleep, she saw him open it and hold something that was inside. It might have been a ribbon, something that had belonged to someone else. His first wife, Elizabeth, or maybe his brother. She never asked. Some wounds are just not ready to be touched. They worked together every day, side by side, and slowly the silence that hung between them turned from awkward into comfortable. Sometimes Sam would almost smile at something she said. And sometimes Ruth Ann would catch him just watching her with a look on his face she could not quite figure out. A look she could not figure out. A new feeling was taking root between them, something delicate and fragile. Ruth Ann was scared to even put a name to it. The drought bit down hard during the 4th week. Ruth Ann first saw the signs down at the creek. The water level had dropped in a single night. Its flow was now just a weak trickle. Sam. He came running when he heard her call. He took one look at the creek, and his face lost all its color. Crawford. You reckon he put a dam upstream? He has been talking about cutting it off for years. Sam was already heading for the horses. I have got to go see for myself. I am going with you. Ruth Ann, I am coming. He studied her for a long second, then gave a firm nod. They rode with urgency, pushing their horses up into the hills where Crawford's land met theirs. And there it was, a brand new dam made of earth and timber, turning the water from Sam's land over to Crawford's. That son of a gun. Sam's voice was trembling with rage. He really went and did it. Is that legal? No. Well, maybe. I do not know. Sam raked a hand through his hair. Water rights around here are a tangled mess. He will claim he is just taking his rightful share. I will argue he is stealing mine. The sheriff will not lift a finger. It will end up in court, drag on for months, and my cattle will be long gone by then. So what is our next move? Sam just stared at the dam. Ruth Ann could practically hear the gears turning in his head. She watched him consider his choices, and she knew none of them were any good. We will have to find a way. Find another source of water. Maybe drill a well if we can scrape the money together. He turned his horse back toward home. Let us go. There is nothing for us to do here. They rode back without a word, the silence thick and heavy between them. The next few days were a living nightmare. Sam worked from sunup to sundown to keep the cattle from dying, hauling water from a pond 2 miles away, stretching every last drop. Ruth Ann toiled right beside him, her hands covered in blisters and her back aching fiercely. And with every passing night, Sam's nightmares grew worse. Tamza Thomas. Ruth Ann stopped trying to sleep after he called out. She would just lie there in her bed, listening to him struggle his way back to the waking world, wondering if she should go to him, and if he would even let her. On the 5th night, she could not stand it a moment longer. She got up, walked over to his door, and knocked gently. Sam? Silence, but the thrashing sounds had stopped. Sam, I am coming in. She eased the door open. He was sitting on the edge of his bed with his head in his hands, his shoulders shaking. But he was not crying. It was something worse, something deeper. Ruth Ann sat down next to him, close enough to feel the heat from his body, but she did not touch him. You do not have to talk about it. I know, but I am here if you decide you want to. A long quiet stretched out. Then his voice finally came. It gets worse when things go bad. The ranch, the water, Crawford. His voice was ragged and broken. When everything starts to crumble, I am right back in that field, watching Thomas burn, smelling the smoke, hearing his screams. Ruth Ann's heart felt like it was being squeezed in a fist. Sam, I could not get him out. I tried. Lord, I tried, but the beam was too heavy, and the fire was too hot. And his voice broke. I left him there. I ran to save my own skin. I left my brother to die. You had no other choice. There is always a choice. No! Ruth Ann's voice was suddenly firm. There is not. Sometimes the only choice is to live or to die right there with them. You chose to live. That is not being a coward. That is being human. Sam finally looked up at her. His eyes were wet, full of devastation. Elizabeth could never understand. She said I was damaged. She said the war had broken something inside me that could not be put back together. He let out a bitter laugh. Maybe she was right about that. She was wrong. Ruth Ann reached out and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers like a drowning man grabbing onto a rope. You are not broken, Sam. You are wounded. There is a difference. Is there really? Something that is broken cannot be fixed. Something that is wounded can heal. She squeezed his hand gently. You can heal, but you have to let yourself. They sat there together in the dark for what felt like a lifetime. Not a word was spoken, just the sound of their breathing, just being together in that room. At last, Sam's grip softened. His breathing evened out. Thank you, he whispered. Do not thank me just yet. Tomorrow is going to be another hard day. I know. A small smile almost touched his lips. But at least I will not have to face it by myself. Ruth Ann went back to her own room, but the air between them had changed. Something important had shifted. The next morning, Jake Thornton came riding in at dawn. Ruth Ann heard the horse and stepped out of the cabin, still pulling on her boots. Sam was already out in the yard, talking to the young man who looked like he had seen a ghost. Fire, Jake was saying. It started over on Crawford's land, but it is heading this way, and it is moving fast. Ma sent me to give you a warning. Sam's face went completely white. How far out? Maybe 5 miles. The wind is pushing it straight south. That is headed directly for our pastures. Sam was already in motion. Ruth Ann, I need you to get the horses out of the barn. Move them to the far corral. Jake, you help me round up as many of the cattle as we can manage. What about the cabin? If that fire gets to the cabin, we will have much bigger problems. Sam grabbed a saddle. Everybody move now. Ruth Ann did not hesitate. The next 2 hours were pure chaos. She got the horses clear, then raced back for the chickens, and then she helped Sam and Jake push the cattle away from the approaching flames. The smoke hit them first, thick and choking, and it painted the whole sky a terrifying shade of orange. It is coming over the ridge, Jake yelled out. We have got to get out of here. Not yet. Sam was still fighting with a group of stubborn steers. We cannot lose them, Sam. Ruth Ann grabbed his arm. We have to leave. He looked at her, his eyes wild with desperation. I cannot lose this ranch. It is everything I have left. You have me. The words just tumbled out before she could think. You have me, Sam, and I need you to stay alive. Something in his expression finally gave way. Some piece of him surrendered. All right. He swung up onto his horse. All right, let us ride. They spurred their horses hard, the fire roaring right behind them. Ruth Ann could feel the intense heat on her back. She could hear the awful crackling sound of the flames eating up everything they touched. They reached the far ridge just as the fire swept over the ranch. Ruth Ann could only watch as the cabin was swallowed by fire. No. Sam's voice was barely audible. No, no, no. He started to turn his horse back. Ruth Ann reached out and grabbed his reins. Sam, stop it. That is my home. That is everything I have built, and you will be dead if you go back in there. I do not care. Well, I do. She was crying now, the tears making clean streaks through the soot on her face. I care, you stubborn fool of a man. I care. Sam stopped fighting her. He just looked at her. The fire raged on behind them. Everything he had worked for over 10 years was turning to ash, but he was looking at her as if she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Ruth Ann, do not you dare leave me. Her voice cracked with emotion. Do not you dare die on me. Not now. Not when I have finally... She could not say the rest. She could not get the words out. Sam reached across and he cupped her face in his hands. His palms felt rough and warm and they were trembling. I am not going anywhere. Promise me. I promise. He kissed her then. It was not a gentle or careful kiss, but one that was desperate and fierce, and it tasted like smoke and fear and something that felt an awful lot like hope. Ruth Ann kissed him right back. All around them the fire burned. The world was ending, or at least it certainly felt that way. But in that one moment, Ruth Ann did not care about the cabin or the cattle or what would happen tomorrow. All she cared about was this man, This wounded, stubborn, beautiful man who had given her a chance when nobody else would. When they finally broke apart, Sam pressed his forehead against hers. We will rebuild. What? The cabin, the barn, whatever we have lost. His voice was steady now, filled with a new resolve. We will rebuild it all together. Do you really mean that? I mean every single word I say to you, Ruth Ann. He pulled back just enough to look her in the eyes. I do not know exactly when it happened, but somewhere in these last few weeks you became the most important thing on this entire ranch. More important than the dirt under my feet. More important than the cattle. He took a breath. More important than the ghosts I have been carrying all this time. Ruth Ann felt fresh tears spill down her cheeks. Sam, I love you. The words felt like a lightning strike to her own ears. You what? I love you? And I'm so sorry it took a wildfire to make me finally say it. He almost managed to smile. I have never been good with words. You are getting better at it. She kissed him again, but this one was softer. It was a promise instead of a desperate plea. When they separated, Jake Thornton was making a big show of looking anywhere else. The fire is dying down, he called out. The wind has shifted. Sam turned and looked back at the ranch. The cabin was gone. The barn was singed, but the fences were still up. And off in the distance, Ruth Ann could see the cattle moving around, alive, saved by their hurried escape. We did not lose everything, she said softly. No. Sam took her hand in his. We did not lose what is important. They rode back down the ridge as the smoke began to clear. The damage was bad, but it was not the total disaster it had first looked like. The barn would need some work, but its main frame was still solid. The root cellar had survived. The wells were still drawing water, and the cattle, at least most of them, were all right. Somebody started that fire. Sam's voice was flat and cold. Dangerous. It did not start on its own. Not in that spot. Not spreading that fast. A knot of ice formed in Ruth Ann's stomach. Crawford. Crawford. Can you prove that? No. But I know it was him. Sam looked at the charred timbers that used to be his home. He wanted to run me off this land. He wanted to break me so I would sell out to him. Did it work? Sam stood there quietly for a long moment. Then he squared his shoulders. No, it did not work. He turned to face her. He does not know who he is messing with, either of us. Ruth Ann felt something swell up inside her chest. It was a mix of pride and grit and pure anger. So, what is our next move? First, we rebuild. Then we are going to show Crawford and anybody else watching that we are not going anywhere. Sam's jaw was set like stone. And when the time is right, we are going to make him pay for what he did. How? I do not know yet, he said. She squeezed her hand, but we will handle it together. The sun was dipping behind the mountains, painting the smoky sky all shades of red and gold. Ruth Ann stood in the ashes of what was supposed to be her new home, holding the hand of a man she had known for less than a month. Everything was gone. Everything was just getting started. They slept in the barn that first night. Ruth Ann lay on a big pile of hay with Sam's arm wrapped around her. Both of them smelled like smoke and sweat and were tired down to the bone. It should have been miserable. It should have felt like they had lost. But instead, she just felt safe. You awake? Sam's voice rumbled deep in his chest. Cannot sleep. Me neither. He pulled her in a little closer. I keep thinking about what we lost. I keep thinking about what we have still got. Sam was quiet for a second. You are stronger than I am, Ruth Ann. No, just more stubborn. He almost let out a laugh. Almost. The morning came on hard and bright. Ruth Ann woke up to the sound of horses, a lot of horses coming up fast. Sam was already up, holding his rifle. Stay here, like hell I will. They walked out together. Eliza Thornton was riding at the front of a whole group of people. Jake, the town blacksmith, was with her. 3 other men Ruth Ann had never seen before, and behind them were 2 wagons, loaded up with lumber and all sorts of supplies. Heard what happened, Eliza called out as she swung down from her horse. Figured y'all could use a hand. Sam's jaw was working. Eliza, you do not have to... Oh, shut up, Sam. Eliza's voice was firm, but her eyes were kind. We are neighbors. This is just what neighbors do. The blacksmith came forward. The name's Tom Garrett. We met for a second, Mrs. Hartwell. I know we have not been what you would call friendly, but nobody deserves what Crawford did to you. You believe it was Crawford? Ruth Ann asked. Everybody believes it. Tom spat on the ground. That fire started on his land. It spread way too fast to be an accident. That man has been making enemies around here for years. This was just the last straw. More wagons kept showing up all morning. Margaret Sullivan brought food. The preacher brought prayers and 2 strong hands. Even folks Ruth Ann had never laid eyes on came with tools and lumber and the simple will to help out. By noon, the frame of a new cabin was already going up. Ruth Ann worked right alongside the women, cooking for the men, hauling water, and doing whatever needed to be done. Her hands got blistered all over again. Her back was screaming, but she did not stop. You are pushing yourself too hard, Margaret told her quietly when they took a short break. I am fine. You look like you've seen a ghost, and I saw you nearly hit the floor 2 times this morning. Margaret's gaze sharpened. When was the last time you had a proper meal? I cannot rightly say. That is what I feared. Margaret pushed a warm biscuit into her hands. You eat this, and then you rest. The work will keep. Ruth Ann ate the biscuit, but she found no rest. When the sun went down, Sam found her perched on a stack of fresh-cut lumber, just staring at the frame of their new house. You ought to be in the barn. A chill is setting in. I had to see it. Ruth Ann kept her eyes on the house, needing to feel it was real. Sam settled down next to her and took her hand in his. It is real, darling. We are going to make it through this, are we? Her eyes finally met his. Crawford is still out there. He still has his eyes on your land. What is to keep him from burning us out all over again? I am. Sam's voice turned hard as iron. I am going to stop him. How do you plan to do that? I do not know just yet, but I will find a way. Ruth Ann wanted to believe him. She had to believe him, but a cold fear was settled deep in her bones. The following week was a whirlwind of hammers and saws. The new cabin rose from the ground, smaller than their first, but built strong. The whole community came out every day, working from sunup to sundown and waving off any talk of payment. You would do the same for any of us, Eliza said when Ruth Ann tried to thank her. That is how we make it out here. We stand together or we all fall down. But Crawford was far from done. Ruth Ann was in town for supplies when she felt the whispers crawling up her spine. Did you hear about that Hartwell woman? What about her? I heard she was run clear out of Boston, got tangled in some kind of scandal. Ruth Ann went cold all over. She turned around slowly. 2 women were standing by the bolts of cloth. Their heads were close together, their voices hushed, but not hushed enough. What sort of scandal? The worst kind there is. They say she went after a man, tried to tempt him, and when he turned her away, that is a lie. The women jumped and spun around. Ruth Ann walked right up to them, her heart hammering against her ribs, her hands trembling. That is a bald-faced lie, and I want you to tell me who fed it to you. The women shot a look at each other. The older, bolder one finally spoke up. It was Mr. Crawford. He said he had word from back east. Said folks ought to know what kind of woman Sam Hartwell brought to this town. Ruth Ann felt the color drain right out of her face. Crawford? Well, of course it was him. The truth, Ruth Ann said, her voice holding steady even as she trembled, is that I was a housekeeper in Boston. My employer's son tried to force himself on me. I fought him off. His mother decided to believe her son instead of me. The women just stared, their mouths hanging open. I was blamed for a crime I did not commit. I lost my job, my home, everything. I came here hoping to start over. Ruth Ann lifted her chin high. You believe what you want to believe. I know the truth, and so does the good Lord. She turned on her heel and walked straight out of that store. Her hands did not stop shaking until she was halfway back to the homestead. Sam knew the second she came through the door that something was wrong. "What is it? What happened?" It was Crawford. Ruth Ann set the supplies down on the table, her hands unsteady. "He is spreading those awful stories about Boston, about what happened to me." Sam's face grew dark, a storm gathering in his eyes. "What exactly is he telling people?" "The lie. The very same one that ruined my life back there." Ruth Ann felt tears welling up, but fiercely blinked them away. "He is trying to turn everyone against me, against us. That low-down snake." Sam did not say a word. He just grabbed his hat and made for the door. "Sam, you stop right there." He froze with his hand on the latch, but did not turn. "What would you have me do, Ruth Ann? Just let him tear you down? Let him win?" "No, I want you to be smart." She came up behind him and put a hand on his arm. "He is trying to bait you. He wants you to ride over there, mad as a hornet, so he can have you arrested or worse. Do not give him the satisfaction." Sam stood there, wound as tight as a spring. "I cannot just do nothing. Then let us do something intelligent. Let us find proof. Let us build a case and make him answer to the law. The law does not work for folks like us, and you know it. Then we will make it work." Ruth Ann squeezed his arm tighter. "I did not survive everything back in Boston just to watch you get cut down in some dusty street fight. Please, Sam, just think for a minute." A long, heavy silence passed between them. Slowly, the tension drained from Sam's shoulders. "You are right. You are always right." He finally turned and looked at her. "But I am not letting him get away with this. I know you are not. We will figure this out, you and me." Sam pulled her into his arms and held her like she was the most precious thing in the world. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I should have said it sooner. I should have said it every single day. Just tell me now. I love you. I love you more than words can say." Ruth Ann closed her eyes and let his words be a balm on her soul. They would find a way. They had to. Their answer rode in 3 days later in the form of Jake Thornton, who came tearing in on his horse, breathless and wide-eyed. "I found something. Y'all need to come see this." They followed him to the edge of Crawford's land, keeping low in the thicket. Jake pointed to a clearing where 2 men were busy at work. "Just watch." Ruth Ann watched them. The men were putting up some kind of structure down near the creek. Another dam. Sam's voice was a low growl, full of fury. "No. Look again. But closer this time." Sam narrowed his eyes. Then his whole expression changed. "That is kerosene. They are stockpiling kerosene." "A whole lot of it," Jake confirmed. "I trailed Crawford's foreman yesterday. He bought 6 barrels from a traveling trader. He claimed it was for lamps, but ain't nobody needs that much kerosene just for lamps. He is planning to set another fire." "That is what I was thinking." Jake looked from Sam to Ruth Ann. "But here is the good part. I wrote down the dates. I wrote down everything I saw. I even got the trader's name. I reckon he will talk if his palm gets greased a little." A spark of hope ignited in Ruth Ann's chest. "That is real evidence. It is a start." Sam was already thinking, his mind finally turning from pure anger to strategy. "We need more than that. We need to catch him red-handed. How do we do that?" "We lay a trap." Sam's eyes found Ruth Ann's. "We make him think we are weak, that we are about to pack it in and leave. He will get greedy and make his move, and when he does, we will be waiting. That is mighty dangerous, Sam. Everything about this is dangerous." Sam took both her hands in his. "But it is a whole lot better than sitting here and waiting for him to strike the next match." Ruth Ann thought about Boston, about how she had waited for things to get better while they just got worse, about how she had let her life fall to pieces around her. "Not this time." "All right then," she agreed. "Let us get it done." They went about it real quiet-like, letting just the right folks know that Sam was having a hard go of it, that the fire had just about broken his spirit. The whispers suggested that Ruth Ann was even considering leaving him, heading back east where she came from. It took less than a week for the rumors to find their way to Crawford. Ruth Ann was certain because Margaret Sullivan told her he had been in the general store just yesterday, grinning like a fox in a henhouse. He asked if there was any truth to Sam giving up. He even wondered aloud if the land might be up for sale before long. "And what did you say to him?" "I told him I do not make it my business to know about Sam Hartwell's affairs." Margaret took a breath, but I did not set him straight either. "Good." Margaret looked closely at her face. "You are up to something, are you not? You be careful, Ruth Ann. That man Crawford ain't got a lick of conscience. If he gets it in his head you are a problem, he will come for you directly. Let him try." That evening, Ruth Ann told Sam what had been said. He gave a slow nod. "It is working. He thinks we are beaten." Sam was tending to his rifle, his hands steady and sure with each practiced move. "Jake is keeping an eye on his property every single night. We will know the second they make their move, and then that is when we put a stop to them, with witnesses and with proof." Sam looked up from his work. "We will put Daniel Crawford behind bars, right where he belongs." "You really believe that is possible?" "Truly. I believe we have got to try." Sam put the rifle down and walked over to her. "I am plumb tired of living scared of that man, Ruth Ann. Tired of always watching my back for his next move. If we aim to put down roots and make a life here, this has to be settled once and for all." Ruth Ann nodded. She knew he was right. But later that night, as she lay there in Sam's arms inside their half-built cabin, she came to a firm decision. If Crawford came after them, she was not going to hide. She was not going to run. She was going to stand and fight. The waiting part was the absolute worst. The days just crept by. A whole week passed. Ruth Ann stuck to her daily chores, but every single moment felt heavy, like the air before a big storm. The sound of every distant hoofbeat sent her heart to hammering against her ribs. Every long shadow looked like a threat. And then, one morning, the world tilted on its axis. Ruth Ann woke with a sickness in her stomach, ran to the privy and was heaving until she felt empty inside. Sam found her there, looking pale and trembling. "You are sick. I am all right." "No, you are not all right. You have been worn out for weeks. You nearly fainted twice last month, and now this." Sam's gaze searched her face. "Ruth Ann, what is going on with you?" She looked right at him, at her husband, the man who had given her a new world, and she knew she could not tell him a lie. "I believe I am with child." Sam froze right where he stood like a statue. "What did you say?" "I am not positive, but all the signs are there." Ruth Ann's hand drifted down to her belly. "I reckon I am carrying your child." Sam just stared at her, his face a perfect mask you could not read at all. The next thing she knew, he was on his knees before her, his hands coming to rest over hers on her stomach, and his eyes started to well up with tears. "A baby, you think? Most likely." Ruth Ann could feel her own tears starting to fall. Is this good news? Is this okay?" Sam let out a ragged laugh, a sound caught somewhere between heartbreak and pure wonder. "Ruth Ann, this is everything. This is more than I ever dared to hope for again. Again." A shadow passed over Sam's face. "Mary, my first wife. She passed away while bringing our child into the world. The little one, too." Ruth Ann felt a chill run straight through her. "Sam, I was sure I would never get another chance. I thought the good Lord was punishing me for some past sin." He rested his forehead against her belly. "But now you are here, and we are going to have a baby. You are not scared. I am scared to death." He looked up at her then. "But I am also happier than I have been in 10 years. Maybe my whole life." Ruth Ann pulled him to his feet and kissed him with all her might. "We are going to be parents. We are going to be a real family." The moment was flawless, a perfect piece of time. And that is when Jake Thornton came charging in on his horse at a dead run. "Tonight," he hollered, nearly out of breath. "They are making their move tonight." Things started moving mighty fast after that. Sam grabbed his rifle, his pistol, and a pouch of extra bullets. Ruth Ann made to go with him, but he put a hand out to stop her at the door. No, Sam's voice was low and firm. You are carrying our child. I will not have you in harm's way. His tone said there was no arguing. You stay right here. Eliza is already on her way to be with you. And what if something happens to you? It will not. You cannot promise me that. Sam cupped her face in his hands. I can promise that I will do everything in my power to come back home to you, to both of you. He gave her a long, deep kiss that spoke of desperation and love. Then he was gone. Ruth Ann just stood there in the doorway watching him ride off into the dark, one hand pressed to her belly, her heart crying out his name. Eliza showed up an hour later. He is riding with 6 other men, she said, wasting no time on hellos. Jake, Tom Garrett, the Reverend, and 3 others who have had their fill of Crawford. Do you think that is enough? It will have to be. They sat and they waited. The hours crawled by slower than a snake in winter. Ruth Ann paced the floor, then sat, then got up to pace some more. Every little noise from outside made her flinch. Every stretch of silence felt heavy and wrong. The clock ticked past midnight, then 1 in the morning, then 2. Something is wrong, Ruth Ann finally said. They ought to be back by now. These things can take time, or something has gone terribly wrong. Ruth Ann snatched her coat from its peg. I am going. Ruth Ann, no. I cannot just sit here and do nothing. Ruth Ann's voice was starting to break. He is my husband. He is the father of my child. I have to know what has happened. Eliza stood up, her expression a mix of fear for her friend and deep understanding. Then I am going with you. They pushed their horses hard, racing through the blackness of the night, following the path Jake had laid out. Ruth Ann's heart hammered against her ribs with every pounding stride. Her mind kept painting awful pictures. Sam hurt. Sam gone from this world. Sam burning just like his first cabin had burned. That is when she heard the crack of gunshots. Over there! Eliza pointed to a faint, flickering light far off in the darkness. They urged the horses to go even faster. When they finally came over the top of the ridge, Ruth Ann saw the whole terrible scene. The kerosene stores were ablaze. Men were scattered all over the clearing, some still fighting, others trying to run. And right in the middle of it all, Sam was tangled up with Daniel Crawford. The 2 men were locked in a mean, ugly fight. Sam! Ruth Ann was off her horse before she even thought about it, running straight for the brawl. Crawford saw her coming. His eyes went wide and he shoved Sam hard aside, then pulled out a pistol and aimed it straight at Ruth Ann. Do not you take another step. Ruth Ann froze. The air caught tight in her lungs. Crawford, do not do this. Sam's voice was filled with desperation. This fight is between you and me, not anymore. Crawford's smile was a nasty, victorious thing. Drop your gun, Hartwell, or your pretty little wife is going to catch a bullet. Sam paused for a heartbeat, his eyes locking with Ruth Ann's. She gave a tiny shake of her head. Do not do it. But Sam let his rifle fall to the dusty ground. Now the pistol. Sam dropped that too. Crawford let out a harsh laugh. You are just pitiful, going through all this for some woman. A worn-out Irish gal that nobody else even wanted. He motioned with the pistol. Get over here, Mrs. Hartwell. Let us just see what all this fuss is about. Ruth Ann did not budge. I said, get over here. No. Crawford's face twisted up with rage. What did you just say to me? I said no. Ruth Ann's voice was steady, even though she was trembling with fear. You are not going to shoot me, Crawford. You have got witnesses all around. They would see you hang for murder. There will not be any witnesses left when I am through. Oh, yes, there will. Ruth Ann pointed behind him. Just look. Crawford spun around. It looked like half the town was coming over that rise. There were men carrying torches and men holding rifles, and leading them all was the sheriff, who was Crawford's own flesh and blood. It is over, Daniel, the sheriff called out. Put the gun down. You cannot be serious. You are my family. You started fires, you tried to steal water, and you threatened a pregnant woman. The sheriff's voice was as cold as a winter creek. Kinship do not give you a pass for this kind of evil. You could see it all play across Crawford's face. First the fury, then the shock, and finally the pure hopelessness of a trapped animal. He let the gun fall from his hand. The sheriff's men moved in quickly. In just a few moments, Crawford was bound in chains, and Sam was running to Ruth Ann, gathering her into his arms and holding her so tight it felt like he might never let her go. "Don't you ever do something like that again," he murmured into her hair. "Don't you ever put yourself at risk like that. I could not stand by and let him kill you. I would have found another way. You did not have to. We found it together." Sam drew back to look at her. Really look at her. "You told him you were pregnant right in front of everybody." "Well, was I supposed to keep it a secret?" "No, it is just—" Sam gave a shaky laugh. "I just wanted to be there when you told folks is all. You were there. I was terrified. So was I." Ruth Ann placed her hands on his cheeks. "But we did it, Sam. We truly won." Sam kissed her then, a kiss that was soft and sweet and full of all the good things to come. All around them, the night was alive with the glow of torches and the murmur of voices. It was the sound of justice finally, at long last, being served. Crawford was led away in his chains. His land would be taken. His crimes would be paid for. Would be judged in a proper court of law, not some kangaroo court run by his kin. And Ruth Ann, she stood wrapped in her husband's arms, one hand resting on her belly, just watching the sun come up over Montana. They had lost nearly everything they had. They had built it all back again. And now, standing together, they were fixin' to build even more. The trial went on for 3 long days. Ruth Ann sat right there in the front row of the courthouse, her hand held tight in Sam's, watching Daniel Crawford finally answer for all the wrong he'd done. The kerosene, the dam, the fires, all the threats. One witness after another came forward. Folks who had been too scared to say a word before were now made bold by Crawford's downfall. The verdict was read on the 3rd afternoon. Guilty. The color drained right out of Crawford's face. His lawyer jumped up to object. The judge shut him down with just one hard look. "Daniel Crawford, I hereby sentence you to 15 years in the territorial prison. May God have mercy on your soul, because this community sure as heck won't." The whole courtroom just about exploded. Ruth Ann felt Sam's hand squeeze hers. She looked at him and saw tears welling up in his eyes. "It's over," she whispered. "It's finally over." They stepped out of that courthouse and into the bright, blinding sun. It felt like the entire town was out there waiting for them. Margaret Sullivan, Eliza Thornan, Jake, Tom Garrett, the Reverend, and dozens more, and bless my soul, they were all applauding. Ruth Ann felt a warmth creep up her neck. She had never been applauded for a single thing in her entire life. "Give a speech," somebody hollered from the crowd. Sam held up a hand. The crowd got quiet. "I ain't much for talking," he said. "Y'all know that, but I need to say something anyway." He took a deep breath, collecting his thoughts. 3 months ago, a woman stepped down from a stagecoach in this town. She had come 2,000 miles with nothing but a carpet bag and a little bit of hope. Most of you didn't trust her one bit. Some of you were just downright cruel. Ruth Ann could feel everyone's eyes on her. She just held her chin high. "But she stayed," he continued. "She worked. She proved who she was every single day." Sam's voice got thick with emotion. "And when Crawford came for us, when everything was going up in smoke, she stood her ground. She didn't run. She didn't break." He turned to look right at her. "Ruth Ann Brennan came to this place looking for a second chance. But she gave me a whole lot more. She gave me a reason to keep on fighting. She gave me hope when I had forgotten what hope even felt like." Sam took her hand. He raised it high for everyone to see. "This woman is my wife. She's carrying my child. And there ain't nothing in this whole world that makes me prouder than standing right here beside her." The crowd just roared. Ruth Ann couldn't hold back the tears this time. She didn't even try to. Eliza pushed her way through the people and gave her a big, fierce hug. "Welcome home, Ruth Ann. For real this time. Thank you. Don't you go thanking me. You earned every bit of it." The weeks that came after were the happiest Ruth Ann had ever known. The cabin was all finished, even bigger than the first one, with 2 bedrooms and a real kitchen. The neighbors had pitched in and added things Sam never would have thought of. Curtains on the windows, a nice rug by the fireplace, even a rocking chair for the nursery. Ruth Ann just cried when she saw that rocking chair. "Eliza made it," Sam said in a low voice. "It's the same design as the one her grandma brought all the way from Virginia. It's beautiful. So are you." Ruth Ann looked up at him. After all they had been through, those words could still make her heart skip a beat. "You mean that?" "I mean every word I say to you." Sam walked over to her, placing his hands on her growing belly. "Have I told you twice today that I love you?" "That's not enough." He kissed her on the forehead. "I love you, I love you, I love you." "That's 5 times now, still not enough." The pregnancy moved along. Ruth Ann got rounder and more uncomfortable, her back always aching, her feet all swollen. She griped about it all the time, and Sam just listened, never making her feel bad. He would rub her feet at night and get up to fetch her water, never once treating her like she was a burden. "You're too good to me," she told him one evening. "I'm exactly as good as you deserve." "That's not what I meant." "I know what you meant." Sam put her foot down and looked at her, real serious. "Ruth Ann, for 10 years I've just been waiting to die. I was just going through the motions, carrying a guilt so heavy I could hardly take a breath. Sam, let me finish." He took both her hands in his. "You changed all that. Not by doing anything special, just by being here, just by being you, by making me be real, too. I didn't make you do anything." "Oh, you did. You made me feel again and hope again, and believe that maybe I deserved good things, too." His voice started to crack. "I spent all that time thinking God was punishing me for surviving when Thomas died, for not being able to save Mary and the baby. But then you showed up and I realized something." "What?" "Maybe God wasn't punishing me at all. Maybe he was just waiting until I was ready, waiting until you were ready." Sam pressed his forehead against hers. "We found each other, Ruth Ann, against all the odds in the world. Doesn't that feel like grace to you?" Ruth Ann thought about Boston, about that pantry, about the church basement and those desperate letters and the 2,000 miles of fear and hope. "Yes," she whispered. "It feels exactly like grace." The labor began 3 weeks early. Ruth Ann woke up in the dead of night, gasping as a sharp pain tore through her middle. "Sam!" He was right there beside her in an instant. "What's wrong?" "The baby. The baby's coming. It's too early." "You tell that to the baby." Sam's face turned white as a sheet. Ruth Ann saw it happen. She saw the fear and that awful memory flood right back into his eyes. Sam, look at me." He looked. "This is not Mary. This is not that night. I am going to be fine. You can't know that for sure. I know I am stronger than I have ever been. I know I have you. I know Eliza's 5 miles down the road and she's delivered half the babies in this valley." Ruth Ann gripped his hand tight as another contraction hit. "Now you go get her, and don't you dare fall to pieces on me." Sam kissed her hard, and then he was gone. The hours that followed were the longest of Ruth Ann's life. Eliza got there just before sunrise, all calm and capable, taking charge the second she walked in. She sent Jake into town to get the doctor, even though she didn't think he would make it in time. "This baby's coming fast," she told Ruth Ann. "You're doing just fine. It hurts." "I know, honey, I know it does, but—" "You're almost there." Sam stayed right by Ruth Ann's side through the whole thing. He held her hand, let her crush his fingers without a single complaint, and wiped the sweat from her forehead. "I can't do this." Ruth Ann gasped after what felt like an eternity. "Yes, you can." "I can't, Ruth Ann." Sam's voice cut right through her panic. "Look at me." She looked. "You crossed 2,000 miles all by yourself. You survived Boston. You survived Crawford. You survived every single thing life could throw at you." His eyes were fierce, full of certainty. "This is just one more thing, and you are going to survive it too." "How do you know?" Because you are the strongest person I have ever met, and because I refuse to let you go." Something inside Ruth Ann shifted. The fear didn't just vanish, but it made room for something else. Determination. Pure stubbornness. It was the same fire that had carried her clear across a continent. "Okay," she said. "Okay, let's do this thing." 2 hours later, their daughter was born. Eliza placed the baby right into Ruth Ann's arms. She was tiny, perfect, and screaming with a healthy set of lungs. "She's beautiful," Eliza said with tears in her eyes. "Just absolutely beautiful." Ruth Ann looked down at her daughter. This little miracle, this proof that life could start all over again, that hope was not a foolish thing, that second chances were real. Sam. He was just staring at the baby like he had never seen anything so precious in his whole life. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "She's got your hair. She's got your eyes. She's perfect. She's ours." Sam reached out a hand, touching the baby's cheek with one of his rough fingers. The baby grabbed onto it and held on tight. "Hello, little one," he said softly. "I'm your father, and I promise you, I am going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know just how much you are loved." Ruth Ann felt the tears streaming down her own face. Good tears. The very best tears. "What should we name her?" she asked. Sam thought for a second. "Grace. Her name is Grace. Because that's what she is. That's what you are. That's what this whole life is." He looked at Ruth Ann, his eyes filled with wonder. "Grace we didn't earn. Grace we didn't deserve. Grace we got anyway. Grace Hartwell." Ruth Ann said the name out loud. "I like it, Grace it is. Grace it." Then the doctor showed up, 2 hours too late. He checked on Ruth Ann and the baby and said they were both as healthy as could be. "You're a lucky man, Hartwell," he said as he was leaving. "Don't you forget it." "Trust me," Sam said. "I never will." The first year of Grace's life went by in a happy, tired blur. Ruth Ann had never worked so hard in her life, what with the feeding, the changing, the soothing, all on top of keeping up with the ranch work, the cooking, and all the endless chores of life in Montana. But she had also never been happier. Grace was a good baby, always cheerful and curious, fascinated by everything from the chickens to the sunsets to the sight of her own father's face. Sam was just smitten with her, carrying her everywhere, talking to her, and always falling asleep with her laying right there on his chest. "You're going to spoil her rotten," Ruth Ann said one evening. "That's the plan. She needs to learn to sleep in her own bed. She will, in time." Sam kissed the top of Grace's fuzzy red head. "But right now she's only this little for a short while. I'm not missing a single minute of it." Ruth Ann wanted to argue the point, but she couldn't. Not when she felt the exact same way. The community had welcomed them in completely now. Margaret Sullivan brought by casseroles every single week. Eliza would stop in just to give Ruth Ann a break. The ladies from the church got together a quilting circle and made Grace a blanket so beautiful it made Ruth Ann cry when she saw it. "You belong here," Margaret told her one afternoon. "I know I wasn't so welcoming at first, but you have proven yourself 10 times over. Thank you. Don't you thank me. You're the one who did the work. I'm just finally smart enough to see it." See it. When Grace was just 6 months old, a letter showed up all the way from Boston. Ruth Ann knew that handwriting in a heartbeat. It was Mrs. Whitmore. Her hands were trembling as she cracked it open. "What is it?" Sam asked, studying her face. Ruth Ann read the whole letter. Then she read it all over again, and then she just started to laugh. "What? What in the world is so funny?" "Charles Whitmore." Ruth Ann's voice was thick, like she could hardly believe the words. He tried to force himself on another servant girl, but this one, well, she had a brother. A big brother who beat Charles nearly to death. Good. That is not even the best part. Ruth Ann held up the paper. "Mrs. Whitmore is writing to say she is sorry. She says she finally believes I was telling the truth. She wants to give me my good name back." Sam's face grew hard. You mean she wants to clear her own conscience? Ruth Ann looked down at the letter, at that fancy script that once put the fear of God in her. But it does not matter. What do you mean by that? I do not need her apology. Ruth Ann walked over to the fireplace. I do not need Boston to forgive me. I do not need a single thing from that world anymore. She let the letter fall right into the flames. Sam watched it curl into ash. You sure about that? I have never been more sure of anything in my life. Ruth Ann turned right around to face him. My life is right here with you, with our Grace, with this whole ranch, and these good neighbors and this land, and if they never believe you back east, then they just do not believe me. Ruth Ann gave a little shrug. I know the truth. You know the truth. Our daughter will grow up knowing the truth, and that is enough. Sam walked over to her and pulled her into his arms. I love you, Ruth Ann Hartwell. I love you too, even when you go and spoil our little girl, especially when I spoil our daughter. From her blanket, Grace made a happy little gurgling noise. Ruth Ann laughed and went to scoop her up. This right here was her family, her home, her whole life. Everything else was just useless noise. The years rolled on by. Grace went from a baby to a toddler, and then to a little girl with her mama's fiery red hair and her daddy's stubborn chin. She learned how to ride a horse before she ever learned her letters, could wrangle a chicken by the time she was 3, and had her father wrapped completely around her little bitty finger. She is going to be a handful, Eliza predicted one day. She is already a handful, Ruth Ann agreed. The very best kind. More children came along. They had a son they named Thomas, after Sam's brother. Then a daughter they called Mary, for the wife Sam had lost so long ago. Each one of them was a blessing. Each one was a reminder that life keeps going, that love just seems to multiply, and that a family is built as much by choice as it is by blood. The ranch did well. They grew the herd, bought up more land, and hired on some hands to help with all the work. Sam's nightmares began to fade, visiting him less and less, until one day, they just stopped for good. I reckon Thomas would be mighty proud of you, Ruth Ann told him one night. Why would you say that? Because you made it through. Because you built something good right here. Because you did not let that war break you. Sam was quiet for a good long while. I used to think that surviving was some kind of betrayal, like I owed it to Thomas to keep on suffering forever. And now? Now I think maybe surviving was the whole point. Maybe that is what he would have wanted for me all along. Sam looked over at her. You taught me that. You and Grace and Thomas and Mary. You all taught me that living was not a betrayal, it was the entire purpose. Ruth Ann took hold of his hand. I am glad you finally see it that way. I am glad you were patient enough to wait for me to figure it all out. When Grace turned 18, she made an announcement that she was leaving. I want to see what is out there in the world, she told them at the dinner table. I want to go to school. I want to be more than just some rancher's wife. Ruth Ann felt her heart and felt her just about break in two. You are leaving us? Not for good, just for a little while. Grace took her mother's hands in her own. You taught me how to be brave, Mama. You taught me to take my chances. How can I possibly do anything less than that? Ruth Ann looked at her daughter, this fierce, beautiful girl that she had raised. And in that moment she saw herself 30 years ago, clutching that old carpet bag and stepping out into a great big unknown. You are right, she said. You are absolutely right. You are not angry. I am terrified, but I am also so very proud. Ruth Ann squeezed Grace's hands tight. Go see the world. Go be something extraordinary. And when you are ready, you come on home. We will be right here waiting. Grace left on a bright, sunny morning in September. Ruth Ann stood out on the porch and watched that stagecoach get smaller and smaller until it disappeared. Sam's arm was wrapped around her shoulders, and her heart was just as full of grief as it was of pride. She will be just fine, Sam said in a low voice. I know. You raised her right. We raised her right. Ruth Ann leaned her head against him. Remember when you found me at that stagecoach station? I was so scared and all alone, and just so sure that nobody would ever want me. I remember. You changed everything for me, Sam. You gave me a chance when not another soul would. You believed in me when the entire world was calling me a liar. You did the very same for me. Sam kissed the top of her head. You saw a broken man and you loved him all the same. You helped me gather up all the pieces and put them back together. We put each other back together. That is what being partners is all about, is it not? Sam turned her around so she was facing him. That is what love is. Two people making the choice to be with each other every single day. Through all the hard times and the good times, through fires and floods and children leaving the nest. Through it all. Through it all. Ruth Ann looked at this man she had married 30 long years ago. His hair was grayin now. His face was etched with lines from the sun and time. His hands were calloused and gnarled from decades of hard, honest work. But his eyes, they were the exact same, clear and steady, and filled with a love that had only gotten deeper with every passing year. "You are still beautiful," he said, as if he could read her very thoughts. "I'm old. You are beautiful." Sam cupped her face in his hands. "You were beautiful the day you stepped off that stagecoach. You were beautiful the day you told Crawford to go to hell. You were beautiful the day you gave me Grace and Thomas and Mary. Sam, you will be beautiful the day I die and on every single day in between." He smiled a little. "That is not me just saying pretty words, Ruth Ann. That is the honest-to-God truth." She kissed him, a kiss that was soft and sweet and full of 30 years of a life they had shared. "I love you," she said. "I love you more." Impossible. Maybe so, but I will keep on trying anyway. They just stood there together on the porch of the ranch they had built from the ground up, watching the sun go down over Montana. Behind them, their house was full to the brim with memories. The kitchen where Ruth Ann had finally figured out how to cook. The bedroom where 4 babies had been brought into the world. The fireplace where Sam used to read poetry out loud on those cold winter nights. Ahead of them, the future stretched out, unknown, and just filled with possibilities. More years to spend together, more joys and more sorrows, more chances to keep on choosing each other. "Any regrets?" Sam asked. Ruth Ann thought on it for a moment. She really thought about Boston and the whole scandal that had sent her running, about that desperate letter she had mailed off to a complete stranger, about the 2,000 miles of nothing but fear and a sliver of hope, about every last thing she had lost, and everything she had found since. "No," she said at last. "Not a single one. Not even that terrible coffee." "The coffee was awful. You got better. I got better at a whole lot of things." Ruth Ann smiled. "But the very best thing I ever did was answer your advertisement. The best thing I ever did was take a gamble on a broken cowboy with sad eyes and a big dream about building something that would last. And the best thing I ever did was send for a woman who was brave enough to tell the truth." Sam pulled her in close. "We saved each other, Ruth Ann. We built each other up. We became a family. The best family I could ever have imagined in my wildest dreams." The sun finally slipped behind the mountains, painting the whole sky in shades of gold and rose. Somewhere way off in the distance, cattle were lowing. The evening birds started up with their songs. The world just settled into that peaceful rhythm of another Montana night. Ruth Ann Hartwell stood there wrapped in her husband's arms and felt completely whole. She had come all this way looking for a second chance. What she found was a whole new life. She had found love and a family and a purpose and a place to belong. She had found her own self, and in the end, that was worth more than anything this world had to offer. 30 years ago, a woman carrying a battered old carpet bag had stepped down from a stagecoach in Copper Creek, Montana. She had been scared and all alone, and utterly convinced that no one would ever see what she was worth. But one man had. One man had looked at her with clear eyes and called her beautiful, not because of the way she looked, but because of the person she was, because of her courage, her honesty, and her stubborn refusal to let the world's cruelty be the thing that defined her. And that single thing had made all the difference. Ruth Ann looked at Sam, her husband, her partner, her home. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For everything. For believing in me. For giving me a chance. For loving me exactly the way I am. You never needed to thank me for that. Sam kissed her on the forehead. Loving you was the easiest thing I have ever done. Ruth Ann smiled and just let him hold her as the stars began to pop out in the night sky one by one. She had spent her entire life being told that she was not good enough. She had crossed a whole country just to prove them all wrong. And she had done it. Not by becoming some different person, not by changing the woman she was, but by finding a place where the truth of her mattered more than all the lies people told. By finding a man who saw her for who she truly was and loved her completely. By building a life that was real and good and all her own. Ruth Ann Brennan had shown up in Montana with nothing but shame and a little bit of hope. Ruth Ann Hartwell would leave it one day completely surrounded by love. And that right there was a story worth telling. That was a life worth living. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.